Mel Brooks is 99 years old, and he just said something about Rob Reiner that nobody was prepared to hear. What if I told you Mel hasn't spoken Rob's name out loud in 3 months because every time he tries, his voice breaks? What if I told you he's been writing letters to Rob's ghost every single night since December 14th? And what if I told you the words he's finally sharing aren't about comedy or movies or Hollywood legacy? They're about the nephew he raised like a son and lost like a piece of himself. Some say Mel Brooks is comedy's last living giant. Others say he's a national treasure. But what if the truth is that he's just a 99-year-old man who's outlived almost everyone he's ever loved, and Rob Reiner's death was the one he can't survive? His name is Mel Brooks, 99 years old, still breathing, barely. And the confession he just gave wasn't in front of cameras or journalists. It was whispered to close friends who are now sharing it because they believe the world needs to hear what Rob Reiner actually meant to the man who knew him longest. Because the audio exists, the letters have been photographed. And today you'll hear what happens when the funniest man alive finally runs out of jokes to hide behind. This isn't another tribute video. This isn't a Hollywood remembrance with montages and applause. This is what happens when a 99-year-old man realizes he's the last one left standing, and the weight of that survival is crushing him. February 18th, 2026, 2 months after Rob Reiner's death, Mel Brooks' home in Los Angeles, the same house where he's lived for 40 years, where he hosted dinner parties with Carl Reiner every Sunday, where Rob would stop by unannounced just to make Mel laugh. Now it's silent, unbearably silent. And on this particular Tuesday afternoon, Mel called his longtime friend and producer, Alan Spencer, asked him to come over, said he needed to talk about something he'd been holding inside since the funeral. Spencer arrived expecting the usual, Mel cracking dark jokes about death, Mel deflecting emotion with one-liners, Mel being Mel, the man who turned tragedy into comedy for 70 years. What he found instead was a man he barely recognized. Mel was sitting in his chair, the same chair he'd sat in every night with Carl Reiner, watching Jeopardy. And he was crying, not movie crying, real crying, the kind that comes from a place so deep it's been waiting decades to surface. And the first thing Mel said, the thing that broke Spencer completely, was this: "I changed Rob's diapers, and now I have to bury him." What kind of universe does that? Let's go back. Because to understand what Rob Reiner meant to Mel Brooks, you have to understand what Carl Reiner meant to Mel Brooks, and what Mel meant to both of them. Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner met in 1950, both Jewish comedians trying to make it in an industry that didn't want them. Both survivors, Carl of the Great Depression, Mel of poverty so severe he once went 3 days without eating as a child. They created the 2,000-year-old man together, an improvisation that became legendary. Carl asking questions, Mel answering as a man who'd lived through all of human history. It was brilliant, it was revolutionary, and it made them both stars. But more than that, it made them brothers. Not in the Hollywood sense, in the real sense. They spoke every single day for 70 years. Not exaggeration. Every single day. When Carl married Estelle Laboste in 1943, Mel was there. When Carl's children were born, Rob, Lucas, and Annie, Mel was there. And when Carl brought baby Rob home from the hospital in 1947, he handed the infant to Mel and said something Mel never forgot. "This is your nephew, your Uncle Mel now. That's not a joke. That's real." And Mel took it seriously. He showed up to Rob's birthday parties, taught him comedy timing before Rob could read, let Rob follow him around film sets when Rob was barely old enough to walk. One story Mel told Spencer, Rob was 4 years old. Mel was directing a scene for Your Show of Shows. Rob wandered onto set, started imitating Mel's directing style, waving his arms, shouting instructions in gibberish. Everyone laughed, including Mel. But after the show, Mel pulled Rob aside and said, "You're funny, kid, but here's the rule. Always know why something's funny. Don't just go for the laugh. Understand the pain underneath." Rob was 4. He didn't understand. But 20 years later, when Rob directed his first film, he remembered that conversation, and it shaped everything he ever made. Fast forward to 1984. This is Spinal Tap, Rob's directorial debut, a mockumentary about a failing rock band. It should have been a cult curiosity. Instead, it changed comedy forever. The premiere was in Los Angeles. Rob invited Mel, sat him in the back of the theater because Rob was terrified Mel wouldn't find it funny. When the credits rolled, Mel stood up, walked to the front, found Rob, and said something Rob told people about for the rest of his life. "You did it. You made something that's yours, not your father's, not mine, yours, and it's brilliant." Then Mel hugged him, and Rob later said that hug meant more than any review, any box office number, any award he'd ever receive, because Rob had spent his entire childhood in the shadow of Carl Reiner, the son of a comedy legend, and the pressure to be as good or better was suffocating. But Mel never treated Rob like Carl's son. He treated him like Rob, a person, a talent, someone who deserved to be seen for who he was, not whose son he was. And that, Rob once told a journalist, was the greatest gift anyone ever gave him. The years that followed were golden. Rob directed The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, became one of the most successful directors in Hollywood, and through it all, Mel was there. Not publicly. Mel didn't show up on red carpets or give interviews about Rob's work, but privately, he was present. Rob would call Mel after every film wrapped, ask for notes. Mel would watch rough cuts and give brutally honest feedback, and Rob trusted him completely because Mel never lied to spare feelings. When Stand By Me premiered in 1986, Rob screened it for Mel first. Just the two of them in a private screening room. When the lights came up, Mel was crying. "This isn't comedy," Mel said. "This is truth." Rob said, "That's what you taught me. Find the pain underneath." And Mel realized in that moment that Rob had become something Carl never quite was, a filmmaker who could balance humor and heartbreak in the same frame. Who understood that laughter and tears weren't opposites. They were twins. Carl made people laugh at life. Rob made people feel life. And Mel was so proud he could barely speak. But then came the years that tested everything. The 2010s. When Rob's personal life started cracking. When Nick's behavior became impossible to ignore. When the Reiner family dinners Mel attended every month started feeling tense, strained, dangerous. Mel saw it happening, watched Nick spiral, watched Rob try to fix it with love, money, patience, and hope. And Mel, who survived poverty, war, loss, and 99 years of life, knew how it would end. He tried to warn Rob multiple times, not gently, bluntly. One conversation in 2023 is burned into Mel's memory. They were sitting in Rob's backyard. Nick had just been kicked out of another rehab facility. And Rob was talking about trying again, another program, another chance. Mel interrupted. "Robbie, you're not saving him. You're watching him drown and jumping in so you can drown together." Rob got defensive, said Mel didn't understand, said giving up on Nick meant admitting failure as a father. Mel's response, "You think loving him means dying for him? That's not love, Robbie. That's martyrdom, and it's going to kill you." Rob stood up, walked inside, didn't speak to Mel for 3 weeks. When they finally reconnected, Rob apologized. Said Mel was probably right, but then added, "I can't stop trying, even if it kills me. Because if I give up on him, I give up on myself." And Mel realized in that moment there was nothing he could do. Rob was going to ride this out to whatever end came. And all Mel could do was be there to catch him when he fell. Except he couldn't catch him, because when Rob fell, it was final. December 14th, 2025, the day Mel Brooks' world ended. Mel was at home when the call came. A detective. Professional voice. Terrible words. Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer. Reiner had been found deceased. We're treating this as a homicide investigation. Mel didn't respond. Just set the phone down. Stood in the middle of his living room, and for the first time in his life he had no joke, no deflection, no armor, just a 99-year-old man staring at the walls, realizing the person he'd known longest, besides Carl, was gone. People close to Mel say he didn't cry immediately, didn't collapse. He just went still, like someone had unplugged him. For 3 days he didn't leave the house, didn't answer calls, didn't eat. His assistant finally forced her way in and found him sitting in the dark, staring at a photo of Carl, Rob, and himself from 1985. "They're all gone," Mel said quietly. "Carl's gone. Rob's gone. Everyone who knew me when I was young is gone. And I'm still here. Why am I still here?" His assistant didn't have an answer, because there isn't one. The funeral was private, immediate family only, but Rob's children insisted Mel be there, not as a guest, as family. Jake Reiner personally called Mel, told him, "You're not optional, you're his uncle, you have to be there." So Mel went, and according to people who were present, watching Mel walk into that chapel broke everyone in the room. At 99, Mel doesn't walk easily anymore. He's frail, moves slowly, needs assistance, but he refused help that day, walked in alone, sat in the front row, and stared at Rob's casket like he was trying to understand how this was real. During the service, several people spoke. Jake, Romy, Billy Crystal, all talking about Rob the director, Rob the father, Rob the husband. But Mel didn't speak. He'd been asked. He'd declined, said he couldn't trust his voice. So he sat silent, and at the end, as they prepared to move Rob's casket to the cemetery, Mel stood up, walked to the front, placed his hand on the casket, and whispered something nobody else could hear. Later, someone asked Jake if he knew what Mel said. Jake told him. He said, "I'm sorry I couldn't save you, Robbie. I'm sorry I'm still here and you're not." In the weeks after the funeral, Mel disappeared, not physically, but emotionally. Friends say he stopped returning calls, stopped engaging, just sat in his house surrounded by photos and memories. And then he started writing letters. Every night, by hand, long rambling letters addressed to Rob, not emails, not texts, actual handwritten letters on paper. He writes about things they did together, jokes they shared, conversations from 40 years ago that Mel remembers in perfect detail. He writes about regrets, times he should have pushed harder, times he should have said something he didn't. He writes about the unfairness of outliving everyone, about how being the last one standing isn't a victory, it's a punishment, and every letter ends the same way. "I miss you, Robbie. I miss you so much I can't breathe sometimes." Mel's assistant found the letters in a drawer, over 60 of them written since December, and when she asked Mel what he planned to do with them, he said, "Nothing. They're not for anyone else. They're just so I can keep talking to him." But then came the conversation with Alan Spencer, the one where Mel finally broke. Spencer asked Mel what Rob meant to him, not what he meant to comedy or Hollywood, what he meant to Mel personally, and Mel tried to answer, but he couldn't get past 3 words before his voice collapsed. He was silence. He was tears. Spencer waited, didn't push, just sat with Mel in the silence. Finally, Mel said, "He was the last thing I had that felt like family. Carl's gone. Anne Bancroft's gone. Everyone from the old days is gone. And Rob was the last connection to when life still made sense, when we were all young and immortal and the world was full of possibilities." Spencer asked, "What does it feel like now?" Mel's answer, "Empty. Like someone hollowed me out and left the shell walking around so people wouldn't notice I'm already dead." That conversation, recorded with Mel's permission, is the most vulnerable 20 minutes of audio Mel Brooks has ever allowed to exist, and Spencer is sharing it now because Mel asked him to. "Let people hear it," Mel said. "Let them know what it costs to be the last one standing." What breaks Mel most isn't the violence, it's the waste. Rob was 78, healthy, still making films, still full of ideas and energy. He should have had another 10, 15, 20 years. And the fact that his life was taken by the son he tried so hard to save, that's the cruelty Mel can't process. "Rob died trying to love someone," Mel told Spencer. "That's what kills me. He didn't die in a car accident or from illness. He died because he believed love could fix anything, and it couldn't, and now he's gone because he refused to give up on someone who was already gone." Mel blames himself. Not rationally. He knows logically there was nothing he could have done differently. But logic doesn't touch grief. "I should have made him listen," Mel says. "I should have physically removed Nick from that house. I should have done something, anything, because I'm 99 years old and Rob was 78 and I'm still here and he's not, and that's wrong. That's all wrong." In March 2026, Mel did something nobody expected. He reached out to Jake, Romy, and Roy Reiner, asked if he could see them. They met at Mel's house, all 4 of them, the children of the man Mel considered his nephew, the surviving pieces of Rob Reiner, and Mel told them something he needed them to hear. "Your father was the best thing Carl ever made, and Carl made a lot of brilliant things, but Rob was the thing that mattered most. And I'm telling you this because I don't know how much time I have left, and I need you to know that Rob was loved. deeply, by people who weren't required to love him. He earned it every day, and I will carry him with me until I stop breathing. Jake later said that conversation changed something. That hearing Mel, comedy legend, cultural icon, break down over their father made the loss feel real in a way it hadn't before. Grief is abstract until you see it in someone else, Jake said. And watching Mel cry over our dad made me realize we're not alone in this. Even legends grieve like everyone else. Mel Brooks turned 99 on June 28, 2025, 7 months before Rob died. It was a huge celebration. Friends, family, Hollywood royalty. Everyone came to honor the man who'd given them 70 years of laughter. Rob was there, gave a toast, made everyone laugh with stories about Uncle Mel, ended by saying, "Mel Brooks taught me that comedy isn't about jokes. It's about truth delivered in a way people can actually hear, and I've spent my life trying to live up to that lesson." Mel responded, "You didn't just live up to it, Robbie. You perfected it." That was the last public event they attended together, the last time they stood in the same room in front of witnesses. And now that memory, which felt joyful at the time, feels like goodbye. Mel says if he'd known it was the last time, he would have said something more, something bigger, something that captured 75 years of love, respect, and family. But you never know when the last time is the last time. So you just say what you say, and hope it's enough. It wasn't. Not for Mel, not even close. Here's what people don't understand about Mel Brooks. He's not just funny. He survived. He survived poverty that killed people around him, survived World War II where he watched friends die, survived the death of his wife, Anne Bancroft, in 2005, survived Carl Reiner's death in 2020, and every time he survived by doing what he does, making jokes, turning pain into laughter, finding the absurdity in tragedy. But Rob's death broke that pattern, because there's no joke that makes this funny, no angle that makes it absurd instead of awful. It's just awful. Completely. And for the first time in 99 years, Mel doesn't have a defense mechanism strong enough to protect him. "I thought I'd seen everything," Mel told a friend recently. "I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. But this broke something in me I didn't know could break." Mel has started talking about death openly, not in the funny way he used to, in the real way. He told Spencer, "I'm 99. I've lived longer than anyone has a right to, and I'm tired. Not tired of living, exactly, just tired of losing people, tired of burying everyone I love, tired of being the last one left who remembers what it was like when we were all young." He's made peace with his own mortality, says he's not afraid of dying, but he is afraid of one thing. "I'm afraid nobody will remember what Rob actually was. They'll remember the films, the awards, the legacy, but they won't remember that he was kind, that he called me every Sunday just to check in, that he laughed at my jokes even when they weren't funny, that he made everyone around him feel seen." That's why Mel is talking now, why he's letting Spencer share these stories, why he's breaking his own rule about protecting his emotional life, because he's the last witness, the last person alive who knew Rob Reiner as a child, as a young man, as a filmmaker, as a father. And when Mel dies, that knowledge dies with him, unless he speaks. Now, while he still can. On April 15th, 2026, Mel Brooks did an interview, his first since Rob's death. Audio only, no cameras, just his voice. And he said something that stopped everyone who heard it. People ask me what Rob Reiner meant to me, and I don't know how to answer that, because he wasn't just one thing. He was my nephew. He was Carl's son. He was a director I respected. He was a person I loved. He was the last connection to the life I had before everyone died. The interviewer asked, "What do you want people to know about him?" Mel's answer, that he tried. That's all anyone can do, really. Try. And Rob tried harder than anyone I've ever known. He tried to make great films. He tried to be a good father. He tried to save his son when everyone told him it was impossible. And he died trying. And maybe that's the most human thing there is. Then Mel said something that broke the interviewer completely. "I'm 99 years old. I've outlived everyone, my friends, my wife, my creative partner, and now my nephew. And I'm still here, still breathing. And I don't know why. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this time except tell people what they meant to me before I forget. Before I'm gone too." The letters Mel writes to Rob every night have become longer, more detailed, more desperate. In one letter, dated April 22nd, 2026, Mel wrote, "Robbie, I keep thinking about the time you were 7 years old and you asked me why people laugh. And I told you people laugh because the world is scary and laughter is how we survive the fear. And you said, so comedy is like armor? And I said, yes, exactly. And now I realize I've been wearing that armor for 99 years and it doesn't work anymore because you're gone and I can't laugh my way out of that. So what do I do now?" The letter ends. "I don't know how to be Mel Brooks without you and your dad. I don't know who I am without the people who made me feel like I mattered. So I just keep writing these letters and pretending you can read them and hoping that somehow, somewhere, you know I love you." Mel Brooks is 99 years old. He's lived longer than almost anyone in Hollywood history. And the price of that longevity is this. He's buried everyone, his parents, his wife, his best friend, his nephew, the entire world he built his life around. And he's still here. Not because he wants to be, but because biology hasn't caught up to his grief yet. "I used to think living to 100 would be an achievement," Mel said recently. "Now I think it's a curse, because every year I'm alive, I lose someone else. And I don't know how many more losses I can survive before there's nothing left of me." When asked what keeps him going, Mel said, "Honestly, spite. I'm still here out of pure spite, because the universe took everyone I love, and I'll be damned if I let it win by making me give up." But beneath the joke, because even now Mel can't fully abandon humor, there's truth. He's staying alive because someone has to remember. Someone has to tell the stories. Someone has to make sure Rob Reiner isn't reduced to a Wikipedia entry and a list of films. Someone has to say, he was real, he was loved, and he mattered. And Mel is the last person left who can say that with authority. In late April 2026, Mel made a decision. He's creating a foundation in Rob's name, not for films, not for Hollywood, for families dealing with addiction and mental health crises. The foundation will provide resources, intervention services, and support for parents trying to help adult children who are struggling. Everything Rob needed but couldn't find. Everything that might have saved his life. "I can't bring Rob back," Mel said, "but maybe I can stop another family from ending the way his did, and maybe that's how I honor him, by turning his death into something that saves lives." The foundation launches in summer 2026. It's being funded entirely by Mel's estate. And when Mel dies, all remaining funds will continue supporting the mission indefinitely. "This is my last project," Mel said. "Not a comedy, not a film, just something real, something that might actually matter." Mel Brooks is 99 years old, and he just said something about Rob Reiner that nobody was prepared to hear. Not that Rob was talented, not that Rob was loved, not that Rob was important, but that losing Rob was the loss Mel can't survive, the one that finally broke the armor he's worn for 99 years. The one that proved even legends are just people who grieve like everyone else. The audio recordings exist. The handwritten letters have been photographed. The foundation is being incorporated as we speak. This isn't myth. This isn't Hollywood storytelling. This is what happens when the last person standing finally runs out of time to hide the truth. If this story broke something open in you, like this video, comment below. Who have you lost that changed everything? Share this so others understand that grief doesn't have an expiration date. And subscribe for more stories that honor the truth behind the legends. Stories about real people facing real loss. Stories that prove even the funniest people alive still cry when nobody's watching, because Mel Brooks is comedy's greatest living legend. But right now, he's just a 99-year-old man who lost his nephew. And no amount of laughter can fix that. He's running out of time, and he knows it. And the only thing left to do is make sure Rob Reiner is remembered the way he deserves. Not as a headline, not as a tragedy, but as a person who tried, who loved, who gave everything he had until there was nothing left. And Mel will carry that memory until his last breath, because that's what family does. Even when family is chosen, even when family is a nephew you raised like a son, even when family is gone and you're still here and nothing makes sense anymore, you carry them until you can't carry anything anymore. And then you let go and hope you did enough.